What's going on, guys? Welcome into Rover Sports. Wishing everybody, out there watching this a very, very happy new year, a blessed new year, 2021. Really excited to move forward into this next year. And I just wanted to talk about my thoughts, actually. It's inspired by some people I just spoke to. I want to talk about my thoughts on tomorrow's game, Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. Wanted to give my thoughts on that game, and I'm really just out on this Giants team, specifically this year. It's ironic, things move in different sort of parallels, and you look at this Giants team, and the way that the Giants were playing, against the Eagles, Cincinnati, the two Washington games, and after Seattle, I was totally juiced about this team. I was juiced about the defense, thought the offense could do better. And I definitely gave Jones a chance the entire year. Throughout the first portion of the season, Jones was just not very good. If we go back and we look at Daniel Jones and his performances across the board as a quarterback in the NFL, playing for a really average offensive coordinator in Pat Shurmur, and then playing for a really crappy offensive coordinator in Jason Garrett, we can absolutely make excuses for Daniel Jones, but let's go back and rattle off the performances. He had a really good game against Tampa, against the Washington football team, the Washington Redskins. He threw 2 interceptions, and Dwayne Haskins was just worse, and the Giants won that game through defense. Against the Minnesota Vikings, he was very average. Against the Patriots, not very good. Against the Cardinals, against the Lions, he had a pretty good game. The Cardinals, he was not very good. He had one good throw in the Cardinals game last year. Against the Cowboys on Monday night, he was downright terrible. There were chances to win that game against the Dallas Cowboys. And then I'm trying to remember, he probably got hurt. I think Eli then came in. And then against Washington last year, he was great. But again, that was a bad Washington team. And then against the Eagles, he was fine. He showed some signs of life. So then he went into this year against the Steelers. He put together that long drive, but had those crucial turnovers in that game. The second game against the Bears was maybe his worst outing of the season. The Giants defense played an unbelievable second half, gave Jones opportunities to take the lead, and he never had a lead in that game. Against the 49ers, we look at that game with Daniel Jones. He was flat out pathetic and terrible in that football game, and so was the entire roster. Against the Rams, didn't really produce a lot of points. I think the Giants only might have scored 3 field goals in the game, not even a touchdown against the LA Rams. Then what was it? Then it was a Washington game. He had a nice throw to Slayton, scored about 20 points in that game, played decently well. Then against the Eagles, he played, in fairness to Jones, he played all right in the first Eagles game. Kind of a ball control style, not that explosive of plays. Golden Tate really made Jones look better than he is with some of those, contested catches. And then against Washington the second time, he made a great throw to Evan Ingram. He played really well, at Washington. Played better against the Eagles the first time around. The second Eagles game was Daniel Jones' best game. He was decisive. He took over that game, had the rushing touchdown, was flawless in that game. Against Cincinnati through the first half, he played a little bit more aggressive. He played better. The Cowboys game, the first Cowboys game this year, Jones came in there, played really well, put up 34 points, and the defense let him down in that spot. Against Arizona, he was horrible. And against the Ravens this week, he was just okay. And then you can point to, he can't run as well, but Daniel Jones is not an elite level scrambler. He's just not. He's not going to take the hits like Lamar Jackson. He's not going to be an elite runner of the ball. So then you look at Jones and say, is Jones a really good thrower of the football? And I would say that he's not. And I would say that his release is slow. He doesn't have the arm strength to push the ball down the field. He can't push it down the field. And this offense with Jones is not going to be an explosive offensive attack. You know, some people could argue that if you give Jones Devontae Smith, that suddenly that one player is going to unleash Daniel Jones, and suddenly this offense is going to be hitting explosive deep plays in the NFL. And I seriously doubt that. You know, you look at what Jalen Hurts is doing in Philadelphia. He has Deshaun Jackson, that's a very old player. He has a weak Jalen Reagor. And he's putting up explosive plays and statistics against the same Arizona defense that Daniel Jones was flat out horrible against. You look at Justin Herbert, who's who's picked in pretty much the same spot as Daniel. I think maybe even exactly the same spot. He had no running back in Austin Eckler. His receivers are Keenan Allen, who's an older receiver, and then it's Guyman and a bunch of guys off the scrap heap, and a Mike Williams that has been a complete bust in the NFL so far. And he's dealing. You know, he's playing great. He's playing like an elite level guy. You look at Tua Tagovailoa, and Tua hasn't had the most explosive games, but Tua's been winning football games, and he outdueled Kyler Murray against that same Arizona defense that Jones really struggled against. So the point is, and also there's talks, with Tua's performance that the Dolphins could go out and draft another quarterback. And Tua has had less time than Daniel Jones. His running game is not as good. Jones had Barkley last year. Chan Gailey, I would take Shermer over Chan Gailey. I would take Jason Garrett even over Chan Gailey. So the point is about Dave Gettleman is that Jones hasn't worked here. And I've given Jones an opportunity. I've given him 2 years of full work. And he's lost in just about every single game. And I'm tired of the losing. I'm not acceptive of losing. And that there's a bunch of Giants fans out there that want to somehow make the playoffs, that somehow believe, well, they don't want Washington or the Cowboys to make it. I understand that. You're a fan. You don't like those two teams in particular, but I don't want to beg the Eagles to win a game. I don't even want to communicate with that football team. I mean, that just doesn't sit well. You're 5-9. You had a chance to beat Arizona. You look at what the Jets did to the Cleveland Browns, and the way you played Cleveland was just not even close to acceptable. The defense has been terrible these last 3 weeks. It's been horrible. The offense has just been, abysmal. And I look at Jones and his health, and even if they beat a bad Dallas team, they don't deserve to get in. They're a 6-win football team. And also, there's no fans that are going to be at these playoff games. You can't travel. If you're ever going to miss a year to make the playoffs, it's this year. And I'm in favor of drafting Trey Lance or Zach Wilson. I believe that those two quarterbacks are going to be much better quarterbacks in this league than the quarterback that the Giants have. And I believe that if the Giants lose this game, that the Giants are going to have a real opportunity to trade or at their pick select either Trey Lance or Zach Wilson. And I'm on record as saying that these two quarterbacks are going to be light years better than Daniel Jones is going to be. I don't want Justin Fields. I'll give Justin a lot of credit. He's an unbelievable college player. He's won it in massive level, and I believe he's going to have a really good chance to be a national champion college quarterback. He's one of the really good college quarterbacks out there. We'll look back at Justin Fields in a long time, and we'll look back at the Sugar Bowl and at these seasons and really give him a ton of credit for what he's done with Ohio State. But again, you look at Matt Leinart and Vince Young, and there's some really good players at the college level that go into the NFL, and they're not dominant. You look at who's better, Herbert or Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was a dominant college player. You look at who is better, Tom Brady at Michigan as a backup quarterback or Cam Newton, one of the best college players to ever play quarterback. You look at Tim Tebow, who is one of the greatest college players to ever play. Sam Bradford, an elite level college Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Doesn't mean all the time that they're going to go into the NFL and be tremendous quarterbacks. So let's enjoy Justin Fields for what yesterday was. It was unbelievably gutsy. The throws that he made over 50 and 60 yards were flat out spectacular. The knowledge of the offense, the clutch gene, dominating Trevor Lawrence in that game and dominating Clemson, it was flat out sensational. And the guts of this kid, the personality of Justin Fields is one that everybody can root for. This kid is a humble kid, man of faith. Doesn't mean that you are a bad person if you don't believe in faith, but Justin is just tremendously humble. Seems like a wonderful guy. And I think that Justin is not a cocky guy. I think that he's quiet. He loves his teammates, great personality. And I really think that this Ohio State team at this point in the season, with only winning 6 games and at times struggling versus Indiana and Northwestern, for them to come out against a dominant Clemson team, Trevor Lawrence and Dabo Swinney, one of the greatest college coaches to ever, coach. Trevor Lawrence, one of the most dominant college quarterbacks that we've ever seen. And for Trevor Lawrence to take it to the woodshed, or for Justin Fields to do it, and for that offense and for that Ohio State defensive line, that was flat out a phenomenal performance by the Ohio State Buckeyes yesterday. And we should celebrate Justin Fields in the moment instead of always projecting how is Justin going to do at the next level. Is he going to the Jets or the Jaguars? I'm a college football fan, so I love watching what Justin Fields does at the college level. I do. But you look at, this is a different discussion. How good is Fields going to be at the NFL level? And I think Justin, his performance yesterday has solidified him as, to me, worthy of a late first round, early second round grade. Now, I believe that most evaluators and scouts are going to say that he's the second quarterback off the board. They're going to say that he's better than Wilson and Trey Lance. His performance yesterday, for me, put him above Kyle Trask. So he moved up one spot to me. But I'm not just going to completely ignore the performance, but I'm also not just going to completely have recency bias over one performance and completely change a tune and completely flip the script incredibly quickly on Justin Fields at this level. So, yeah, I have concerns about the release point. I think that a lot of his throws are easy rollout throws. I don't believe he's a good scrambling quarterback. I believe that he's athletic, that he can run, but I don't believe his pocket presence is something that, against an NFL defensive line, I don't believe that the pocket presence is there compared to Trey Lance and compared to Zach Wilson specifically. I think Wilson is the truth at the quarterback position. I think that the Panthers are really interested in Wilson. I'm very worried about the Carolina Panthers. I'd love to see them win a game, and I'd love to see the Giants have a pick over Carolina. I'm very, very worried about Carolina in this draft process. You start to look at Washington. Washington could be picking ahead of the Giants, and the Washington Redskins have a really good defensive line. So I'm a little bit worried. I'm worried about the Washington and their prospects of going after a starter in the draft. So I'm totally focused on Trey Lance and Wilson for the Giants. That would be my focus. In terms of an offensive coordinator to replace Jason Garrett, I would really look at Jeff Lebby of Ole Miss. I think he's done a sensational job with Matt Corral. He has Lane Kiffin in his ear as well. I think that you can look at guys like Willie Corn at Coastal Carolina as a shining star in the profession. I want this Giants team to have real concepts. I want them to have a very mobile scheme. I want them to have a very modern NFL scheme with incredible motion before the snap. I want them to be a very attacking level offense. I feel that this offense is very handcuffed with Daniel. I feel that Jason Garrett is not an aggressive enough play caller for my liking. I would let him go. Freddie Kitchens in his one job, in his one game. I don't know if Freddie Kitchens can adapt and do quarterback run game. The one good thing about Freddie is that he's not really in high demand right now as an NFL head coach. It could change with some really good seasons from the New York Giants. So I want the Giants to get a coordinator that's going to implement some quarterback run game, that's going to throw the ball deep. I believe Evan Ingram can be a really elite player with a great quarterback. I look at Slayton as a decent receiver. Sterling is a good one. You somehow, maybe late in the first round, you can trade into the first round, get a Kadarius Toney on the edge that is very fast, that could take the top off of the defense. You can put him in the slot. He can win quickly. His cutting ability is elite. And then you start to look at maybe Tylan Wallace, in the second round out of Oklahoma State. It's a big body wide receiver that can go deep and get the football. He's played with two very average quarterbacks in Spencer Sanders, Shane Illingsworth. Before Spencer Sanders, I'm trying to think of the quarterback that Oklahoma State had. It was that guy Taylor Cornelius was that quarterback that they had. And then before Cornelius, trying to go way back and try to find, maybe it was J.W. Walsh or maybe it was Clint Shelf, but that's maybe backdating me to like 2015 in terms of quarterbacks at Oklahoma State. But I'm not excited about this Giants team at all. I don't believe they deserve the right to go to the playoffs with a 6-win record. I don't. Especially considering the way that they've played the last 3 weeks in crunch time. If the Giants were going to make the playoffs, they needed to win 2 out of these last 4. They failed that test miserably. I'm not going to stand on my hands and knees and beg for the Eagles to do me a favor. I don't want to associate with them. I really don't want to beg a complete rival of yours to help you in any capacity. I do get fans that want to go to the dance and compete for a Super Bowl. That's what it's all about. And yes, Tom Brady could get hurt and you could have some circumstances in the playoffs. But again, Dave Gettleman has not adapted to this modern NFL. He's really failed the last few years. With his drafting, he hasn't really gotten the wide receivers that Jones has needed. You look at Will Hernandez, hasn't really panned out. Gettleman ended up hiring Shermer and attaching his wagon to Shermer, attaching his wagon to a James Betcher. Lorenzo Carter and Xavier Xemenez haven't been good as top 4-round picks. You start to look at Matt Pearl as a decent player. Andrew Thomas so far has been all right, but he hasn't been as good as the Jets pick, which has surprised me. I didn't believe in the Jets guy either. You look at Jedrick Wills, has probably outperformed Thomas this year. If we look at Dave Gettleman and that draft pick, DeAndre Baker was a personality concern. And Dave Gettleman there, you look at Baker's first year in the NFL, he wasn't very good anyway. And then, of course, he had the off-the-field issues with the police, and he's really unable to play on an NFL roster. And, Dave Gettleman gave up draft capital to go select him. And I liked what Dave Gettleman tried to do. I was in favor of them moving on from Beckham and getting a better culture in here. The guys that they've all drafted from the culture standpoint have gotten better. I believe that Gettleman has also gave the next GM a real opportunity. Free agent money, a choice whether to keep Leonard Williams or not, Getting Logan Ryan, getting James Bradbury was very good. So you've had some good free agencies. Blake Martinez has played very well. Carter Coughlin and Cam Brown. You start to look at McKinney, could really be a good player. Darnay Holmes looks like a slot cornerback. So he's left the defense in relatively very good shape. You know, Patrick Graham's a really good coordinator. I truly believe it. I think that he's done a terrific job this year, a very, very good job. I'd give Pat Graham an A-. Now, the only question is Joe Judge going to adapt to the modern NFL in terms of if you're going to have a quarterback, you want to have a quarterback that is mobile in this day and age and not a pocket passer like Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, a little bit injury prone over his time in the NFL, missed some games last year and missed some games this year. And again, I look at the data and I wanted to give Jones a really fair opportunity. Coming from Duke, again, I believe that there's quarterbacks like Justin Herbert that are not as successful as maybe a Joe Burrow in college, that maybe don't, you look at Herbert, he did win a Rose Bowl championship. He won the Pac-12, but against Auburn, he did not win. Against Stanford, he had an opportunity to win. So I look at going forward, Daniel Jones did not win at Duke, but you look at that Duke program and the types of receivers that you have around you at Duke. I really wanted to give Jones an opportunity in the NFL. I did not want to completely boo him and harass him, kind of. I think that a lot of the fans were very emotional at the time. It's a very emotional sport, and that's what fans are for. They're going to be emotional people. And I'm a fan. I'm pretty emotional. I'm fired up. I'm heated after some points too. But I really gave Jones a really fair opportunity. And I was, to go back, I thought Jones could have been good, but I wasn't completely dialed into Jones like I am with Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, like I am with Tua Tagovailoa, like I was with a Davis Webb, even a Jacob Eason. I'm really excited about it. But with Tua, I gave the stamp of approval with, at the draft point, I gave, I'm excited about some of these guys like Carson Strong and Spencer Rattler. I'm excited. I want to give them a stamp of approval, likely after last year. But Daniel Jones, I didn't give him the axe necessarily. I really gave him an opportunity. I needed to see more. I wasn't sure of the evaluation. I was excited, for him to come in there and bring his attitude to New York. But I don't think he can deliver and win at a high level in this league. You look at Baker Mayfield and some of his peers that are similar in age, and they're just better players than he is. And I look at this team, man, and I'm not excited about this Giants football team on offense at all. There needs to be staff changes. There needs to be a quarterback change. It needs to be probably a GM change that'll draft a new quarterback and wide receiver tandem, and I'm excited about that. So anyway, a lot of you guys out there can root for the, Eagles to get the Giants in. You can root against the Dallas Cowboys. I get it. I get people that hate the Dallas Cowboys. I get people that don't like Jerry Jones and this Cowboy team. I get it. I totally understand that from Giants fans that are out there. I don't really know any Cowboys fans necessarily. And so, the Cowboys, again, haven't won in a long time. They've played better football than the Giants. They just as much deserve the division championship. They've other than Washington, they've beaten everybody in this division. So we'll see. It's up to the Cowboys tomorrow. And again, I'm not excited about this Giants team. I don't like the direction that they're going in, and I don't want to be in purgatory. I'd rather draft a quarterback that I believe in long term than win a game And this team against Baltimore, this team against the Rams, this team against the Bears, this team has just not shown the ability to play with really good teams outside the Seattle Seahawks. And that looks like a 1-week anomaly. That does not look like the trend. Against really good teams the last 3 weeks, this team has not only not answered that test, they've gotten flat out crushed. Crushed in the most critical part of the season. So I don't believe they deserve the right to go on to the playoffs. I'm not excited about this football team from what I've watched. I don't believe they can go into this tournament and have any magic whatsoever. If the Giants get in somehow, we'll address that playoff game. I'll root for this team in the playoffs if they get there, but I wouldn't mind a quarterback. If you could choose now between winning the NFC East Championship or drafting Trey Lance or Zach Wilson, I would select Trey Lance or Zach Wilson. I would. So that's where I'm at. Call me a tanker. Call me a tanker. But I don't believe this team has shown me nothing that they can go into the playoffs, that they can beat Tom Brady, and that they can compete for a Super Bowl in this tournament, that they can win not only one game, but a couple of games. I don't believe in this team in doing that. I get your point about Joe Judge. I get your point about the playoffs, but this team is a 5-win football